We are live. We got the camera on. Hey guys. We are live. Hey CJ, check your audio real quick.
Yeah, sorry, my bad, everybody. So let me show you what was supposed to happen here, and that was one the last thing I forgot to do, which was to share.
How can you have more cops?
So let's start the video over. Nick was probably looking like, "What the fuck?"
Last second.
All right, so let's start this the right way. Of course, this is the overlay, the topic for today, and then we'll start with the video now.
Once the police have convinced the white public that the so-called Negro community is a criminal element, they can go in and question, brutalize, murder unarmed, innocent Negroes when the white public is gullible enough to back them up. This makes the Negro community a police state. This makes the Negro neighborhood a police state. It's the most heavily patrolled. It has more police in it than any other neighborhood, yet it has more crime in it than any other neighborhood. How can you have more cops and more crime? Why? It shows you that the cops must be in cahoots with the criminals. Once the police.
Welcome to another live stream on the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Almost don't even need to give these a name sometimes because we're on here so often, Nick, and we kind of like just like this stream. I didn't plan this stream. I just kind of like, hey, I got time.
I didn't plan the stream I did earlier either.
Yeah, I'm like, I got something to do. I got something to say. So let's do something. So.
CJ. We call this one Nick and CJ edition. Let's
absolutely, absolutely. So what I wanted to, I've been working on this. So what I've been doing lately, Nick, is what I've been doing lately is trying to plan my episodes out more, like do a little bit more research into, like, maybe not write it down, but just like do some research into what I'm going to be talking about. And so I have a bunch of videos, got some articles lined up. Now this is the Nick and CJ show but this is the This is America series. where I want to like do a series of episodes. They don't have to be in order at all, where we're kind of unmasking America, like we're showing for somebody that may be under a rock and not see some of the things that we think should be widely known, like the topic today, which is American policing and their roots and origins in slave patrol, slave catching. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So that's the idea behind it, Nick. But what's up? What do you think? What's going on with you?
Yeah, that's a good idea actually. That's a good idea for a series because U.S. history that most people learn and even civics, anything you learn about society is just PR and propaganda that actually hides what our society really is. So we might as well do our own education, tell you guys what America is. So especially considering the topic, I'm definitely enjoying this. I wrote an op-ed. I post on the YouTube because I know a lot of you guys have been asking for the link. So I wrote about this issue. I've been talking. This is probably my main political issue, so I can talk about this all day. I'm just here to chill. I already yelled my head off earlier today, so this should be a good episode. What you guys have, what you guys can present.
Hey man, I feel you on that. Because I got a chance to catch a little bit before I had to take my girls to play school, but I got a chance to catch a little bit of it. But the thing is, when the empire is burning, this is what it looks like for those that's trying to help save it, trying to bond together and save it. This is what it looks like. So I have a series of video footage for our audience. I'm gonna do a chat check in just a second. I have a series of video footage where there are gonna be some overlapping themes like slave patrols, but there will be tidbits of different information in each one, and that's the reason why I wanted to sort of showcase them. This first one is called "Slave Patrols: The Birth of a Modern Nation." This is like a summarized version, like less than 3 minutes, and that's the reason why I wanted to start with this before we kind of get into the details and more deeper into the discussion. So let me make sure this time that everything looks good. Okay, so everything looks good. Let's get into this first video. You can just yell out when you want me to stop and start, Nick, so that we can comment.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast.
To understand slave patrols, it's important to understand the slow development of the state intervention in maintaining slave society, beginning with.
So that's the first thing that jumps out at me, Nick, is the slow progression of the intervention of the state. So you go from, where we're not a country and you just have individual merchants owning slaves when the slave market was opened up. And I learned this through Dr. Gerald Horn being on that weekend. There's so much I learned from him. So when it was opened up and more, merchants were able to just go out, it wasn't the state that's controlling the slave trade, more merchants. So when that happened, you had people that owned their own slaves, but the slow progression of the state stepping in to help these private merchants control the slave population. So that's kind of, to me, something that stands out right away when he speaks here. Let's get down. Sorry, guys. All right, so now I have the video queue back up. Let's continue with more of the video.
Simply passing laws that would restrict the activities of the slaves, and then laws on their own being insufficient, authorizing any adult white man to enforce those laws, but then the reliance on individual action proving insufficient, forming into this body called the slave patrols that were an offshoot of the militia and worked as kind of a voluntary compulsory organization, meaning that participation was mandatory, but it wasn't a professional outfit. That provided a way of.
So another thing, I didn't have a chance to stop it because I was switching something off. Where he said it was like the duty of every white man. You get what I'm saying? So is he sort of alluding to what comes to mind for me is he sort of alluding to that feeling that some black people may feel, you may have felt this way, a lot of people say, a lot of black people, where if you're around, you just don't feel, you feel like the white people around you are looking at you like you don't belong here. So it was like the personal responsibility to be like, what are you doing here? Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, the same reason why you see like white people snitch on people for like exchanging dime bags and shit like that, so that they always watching that person that watch you in the store. It's the same tradition. The snitches, the people who they
watches, neighborhood watches,
that kind of shit. So I can see that being something that's still ingrained in them. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just I like to pick out things that happen in our history that has contributed to contemporary culture. So that's, to me, that might be something. So, but let's continue.
Of making the entire white male population directly involved in maintaining slave society. As industrialization came to the South and there were larger slave populations in southern cities, the slave patrols moved similarly into the city. And there they became professionalized, and very quickly their duties expanded and they became a body that we would immediately recognize as modern police.
And I told you guys this is, and I wrote about this in my article. I brought the slave patrols as well. Modern policing, as we know it as a Western society, is brand new. So the people who are advocating for the giant police state as we know it, they are the radicals. And it's crazy that they flipped it on the other way, where we said we think the community should be in charge. That's how it's been in most societies throughout human history. This changed recently, and I'm gonna kind of keep it short because I'm sure this video gonna go over it too, as well. But the modern American policing, as we know, is brand new. And whenever you hear people say stuff, they're like, "Oh, well, all we had to do is like reform the system. All we had to do, the cops just lost their way. Their way from what? It's always been horrific. Like what you hear liberals, not conservative. Like you hear it more from liberals than conservatives, where they say stuff like, "Well, the police they're just getting more corrupt. We gotta just put reforms, and they'll turn back into the cops that will protect the neighborhood." Like they have like this thought that something they never did. So
there's a couple of videos actually that we're gonna be seeing today where that same sentence is said. Like, name the time when that was the case. Name the time in history where that was the description of the cause.
Like this thing is brand new, guys, and that's the main point I want to make. We can get back to Bill, but that's exactly what I was saying earlier. I hope watching these videos. I haven't seen them. This is the first time seeing them. I joined CJ here, so this is actually very interesting to see. So you can continue the video.
Absolutely.
And now, 200 years later, the basic function of the police is largely the same. It's maintaining the stratified nature of the society, both in terms of race and class.
You look at the whole concept.
I mean, because you think about it, and I know you have a lot to say on this. Think about it. If you examine as an outsider the purpose of American policing, and you examine it from a point of view of, well, forget what you're telling me why you are here. Let me just look at the results of what you're doing. You get what I'm saying, Nick? Like, so if you're telling me you're different than the origins of the slave patrol, then explain to me how the same targets of the slave patrol are the same people that's in jail. Explain to me that. You get what I'm saying? There is like, I don't know how to explain that. But yeah,
you can see. And if you don't believe that theory that they are only here to enforce racial hierarchies, when they had the war against drugs, they harshly criminalized our communities. And then white people got addicted to opioids, and they're like, "Oh my God, heal them! We got to save them." You see the different response? They wasn't having their door kicked in for that at the rate that we did for just smoking pot, right? Some people have fun with cocaine, that kind of stuff. But you know, it was a completely different. Even like white people had like this white powder cocaine that was more popular with them than the African community. And stats show that police not only went after people for white powder cocaine less, and people who were charged with white powder cocaine got less sentences. So if you
who smokes who smokes white powder cocaine? They just been in the news lately, Nick. Remember the guy exposing the cocaine parties? Like, I know of this. Nick, let me tell you a story. I worked at Bank of America. I don't mean like at a bank, at one of their corporate centers before, right? Everybody knew of the dude that sold cocaine. Everybody knew. Oh, I'm going to the car, don't even go. Manager, okay. They all knew. Because that's okay. That's cocaine. Come on, guys. It's powder. It's not like it's crack, like Whitney Houston said one time in a video. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that also and they also enforce laws based on class too. Like we explained how they enforce racial hierarchies. They're also there to protect class interests for the rich. So we all know. Think about the insane parties that rich people have, fucking sniffing cocaine off strippers, whatever. Fill in the blank, right? Like they got drugs everywhere because they can afford it. They can afford it. So they got drugs everywhere. They party hard. How many times do you hear about FBI and police raids into big Hollywood parties, into parties with billionaires and millionaires?
Exactly.
Do you think they're not using drugs? Are
You
you
think
really
they're not having them?
Are you that ridiculous? Do people really think that, oh, people that are millionaires and billionaires, they're a part of high society, so they don't partake in drugs? That is so stupid to believe that. So think about all the poor people who are raided and attacked for drugs, but they're not finding none of the drugs in a New York post Met Gala party, something like this. It's so ridiculous that people believe this. They are only here to criminalize the poor and keep the working class in line.
You know what? It's so Nick. We're getting to like just jail yin and yang in our conversations. How you come up with stuff. I'm sorry. What did you just say? I just lost it because I looked at the screen.
It was like people literally think rich people don't use drugs, and they think rich people are not getting caught for drugs just because they're smart.
Right. I lost it. Let me go to the next thing. It's gonna come back to me. Oh shoot! I had a pop up. How are we still having pop up screens? And it's 2022, Nick. How are they still have pop up screens? But
comment real quick. It's an FBI caught doing drugs and acted up in South America. There's books on it, dude.
Yes.
Dude, you don't think motherfucking cops and FBI and all these people are not using drugs either?
Anyway, that's the class of drug that for them. But let's continue.
Concept of white supremacy and how that fits into the counterinsurgency on a historical basis. Of course, the oldest terrorist organization in the United States, which is the Ku Klux Klan, that was a group that was founded right after the Civil War to inflict terror against the African people in the United States who had been newly freed from slavery and who were beginning to try to organize. And then as you move on into the 20th century and the civil rights movement began to develop the Klan.
Nick, if this is a side question, if you hate these people so much, they've won their freedom, they want to be away from you just like them, why would you go and burn up down their towns? Like, what is the purpose of that? Unless it's more than you just don't want to be around them. Unless it's more than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we over here, bro. We not messing with you. Nobody's marrying your daughters, nothing like that. Just a side question. When I saw this video that I just throwing out there, maybe the in the comments people can comment on that. Put your comments up there. But let's get back to the video.
The Klan and other groups would work alongside the police, whether it was local police or whether it was sheriff's departments, and they would work together to inflict terror to.
Don't we see that today? Isn't that what's his name? The one that got off, Kyle Rittenhouse. This is a tradition.
George Zimmerman, another one.
Right. This is a tradition of white races working in conjunction with their counterparts, their legal counterparts on the inside. This is not new, Nick.
Zimmerman would try and be Batman and killed a little boy for having Skittles.
Right.
That's probably the best recent example of this.
But it speaks.
It happens all the time. To be clear, that's probably the most well-known example, I think. But go ahead.
But these two also speak to the earlier point of white men feeling like it's their responsibility as a tradition. This is you get what I'm saying? It's like interwoven into the culture.
And Rittenhouse and their people was like, "Oh, we just here to protect these businesses."
Exactly.
Like, motherfucker, that's not your business, bro. And you gotta know our position. Property damage is a valid form of protest. If you disagree with me, it worked throughout history many times, including something the white people look up to all the time, the Boston Tea Party. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just about to say, because if you're and they do this thing where they want to counter protest us. That's what that is. If you're there just to protect businesses that have insurance, like, you guys are not protecting anything. You guys think you're protecting something that has insurance.
It's just
but
made up lies.
They do that to counter protest. That's the point.
Right.
That's the point. They feel an obligation to fight against oppression of lower classes for whatever reason. There are many people who write about it, many people who talk about the pathologies, but they just instinctively, like whenever they see people protesting ICE, They don't give a fuck about what you really think in their
No.
day-to-day, like they really care about what's going on in the border and the ICE. But then they
Because
keep on protesting it. They're like, hey, wait, don't protest that.
don't press that.
The most recent
That's in their
example,
DNA too.
yeah, the most
That's
recent
in
example.
what's in their DNA too is workers. It's not just black people. But go ahead.
No, I was about to say the most recent example, and I'll pass right back to you, is the reaction to the Supreme Court protest. You have not only Fox News, not only right wing, you had Jen Psaki and a ton of white liberals that going on like, come on, guys. I know they're taking your rights away, but you can't protest at their homes.
Right.
You see how their initial reaction is always to counter protest against people who challenge power. That's the root of white supremacy.
No, what I was just going to add is that there is another video. We're going to get to that video actually now because this video is about to end. Where they talk about sort of three parts of the DNA of American policing is fighting against slavery or fighting against slave catching. Then it's to protect property. Then it's to squash workers' movement. They're literally talking about that. It's those three things that the invention or what's interwoven into the DNA of the police from its inception, of the American inception, I should say, is this concept. Let's finish this. It's a few seconds, and then we'll get to that next video.
If I go on another round, you can continue the video.
Restrain the movement, the organizing against white supremacy.
Okay, so actually, I started out of order, Nick. Okay, I'm gonna need you to not lose your shit because this video is the debunking video. I sent it to you, but I don't know if you had a chance to actually see it yet.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. So let's play it. I wanted to start with this because it's absolute foolishness. It's not like they make any good points. You'll see in just a second. Okay, now it's
a propagandist. I think it'd be interesting to see. You guys got to see the counter arguments. So it'd be interesting to see.
Right when they get to it, that's the point. Watch. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong one. My bad. All right, this is the right one. Debunking, and I think you might know. Is this a political? Louder with Crowder? Is that a political guy?
God damn it! I know who this dude is.
Crowder Bits. So this is like a conservative, but they don't make any
ever. The biggest.
They don't really make any points. They don't really make any points. They kind of just laugh at the idea that that's the notion that it came from that, and then they just kind of laugh and they don't really make any points. Watch, you'll see. Just tell me. I know right off the bat you're gonna have me stop.
I know this. I've seen this dude. I'm like, this dude's the biggest fucking state bootlicker of all time. He loves power. He loves people in suits. He loves people in uniform. Biggest fucking.
His name is what? His name is Crowder.
Steven Crowder. Yeah.
Oh, the name sounds. I'm sure this is about out in tweets and stuff. Like
I literally only would see him like when like a random like video will pop up on the feed, and every time I see him, it's always the biggest big state government capitalist bootlicking shit, and it's always culture warrior shit. Like he's a white identity politics culture warrior. Everything he covers is rooted in white identity politics. I guarantee you guys, he probably did a segment about trans people in sports. I promise you.
He has a CRT.
He got critical race theory.
He has them all.
Yeah, he got all of them.
Defund the police. Yeah.
I bet you he did a segment talking about. I guarantee you did one saying how Black Lives Matter are violent thugs.
Yeah,
guarantee it. All but guarantee it. But sorry, that's my spiel.
Okay. Well, see, I'm glad I'm discovering this guy then because I'm late to the game. But let's listen to it's him and a guest, or him and a co-host and a guest. Let's listen.
So this is something they teach. They're going to be teaching in schools, and this is something that I know I was taught, and this is something right now that if you run bring up this overlay first. If you run a search,
because I wasn't,
I learned damn well he wasn't taught that. He know damn well he wasn't taught that, Nick.
We made it 10 seconds before we call him Brooklyn. 10 seconds. You know you didn't fucking. I didn't learn that. Like, bro, I learned everything I learned in that article that you told me raw. I wrote about the slave patrols. All of these, that was a lot of research from scholarly people I read from. But this dude's I heard it.
So that's the myth. Because it's to scare his audience to say this is what's happening. Like this is already this. That's what that.
And boomers
That
are
is
so
what
old,
it
they
is
don't
about.
remember what school is like, so they can. It's easy for
Yeah,
them to do
like-
that. So they like, yeah, I don't know what maybe what he was trying to brainwash. They don't remember what that shit's like. So they just have people like, yeah, at school they just telling everyone the truth about how we have real revolutionaries like MLK and Malcolm X. They never even they lied about that. Why do you guys think they tell the truth about this?
This
They
that's my
they-
point.
Anyway, sorry, I don't want to go too much. Let's go.
No,
to the
that's my point. Like everything is suspect. But all right, let's listen.
They
Let's
lied about the indigenous genocide. They lied about the genocide of indigenous
Yeah.
people, but people think our schools are too woke. Are you serious? They lied. I remember in school, the last thing, and then we played Bill. I remember in school, they lied about why we nuked Japan. They said, oh, we had to nuke Japan because we had no choice. Motherfucker, they was ready to accept surrender. I mean, they was ready to surrender. The war was over.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we're about to launch this shit anyway. Like, anyway, sorry. They lied about everything in that war,
It's
bro.
so much. It's so much.
Yeah, we'll go ahead.
All right, so let's go.
Just to give you an idea, if you run a search right now, police force slave patrol, right? Are the American police rooted in
That
racism?
video we're gonna
slave
play
patrols?
actually.
You will not find on YouTube. You will not find on Google. You might find one. I saw one op-ed from the Baltimore Sun.
Yeah.
Everything else claims that it's true. Way down the list, Snopes said mixed. When Snopes says mixed,
If Nick, tell me this. This is how they this is propaganda style. So let me let him say it again, and then I'm gonna go slide right into that.
on Google,
Apparently,
you might
this
find
dude
one. I
don't
saw
know who historians are. He don't know who I read a book, the history. I try to remember the author. I quote them in my op-ed. I literally read multiple historians' account on the slave patrol. So he said, I don't know where I found it, bro. He was just lying to his audience. It's literally there, bro. There are people who wrote historical accounts using anecdotes that they had at the time. And then, like, you think people can just make this up and they can just pass through the test of time without anyone like, no, you just made it. Imagine someone was like, yo, in the 1940s, we had fucking alligators that was like they made some bullshit. We like, no, that's obviously not true, bro. Like there were so many accounts.
Yeah,
but this is like what? What is he even saying? This is like, who will believe this? But anyway, sorry,
it's a propaganda. It's a propaganda tactic, because if I say, if you do a Google search and you look up Earth and you look up round, guess what comes up? Nothing but articles about the Earth being round, because it's true.
I gotta put my. This dude made me want to put my article up. But
you get how ridiculous. The reason you're getting slave patrols that come up with the origin of policing, American policing, is because it's true, not because it's some sort of propaganda. But anyway, let's continue.
Saw one op-ed from the Baltimore Sun.
Yeah.
Everything else claims that it's true. Way down the list, Snopes said mixed. When Snopes says mixed, you know, and it's a leftist claim, you know what that means? They're saying.
No, you didn't have to stop it. That was just one comment, because I was like, you see, talking about media, right? You bring
There's no basis in reality. I want to be
read
really
historians,
clear.
you dumb
need
fuck.
to be able to educate.
Like, you talk about the media. Like, bro, read historical
accounts. Police force is racist.
Education,
right?
It was rooted in racism.
Like, these are the kind
then
of
you
things
delegitimize the entire police force.
Davis used.
Kind of like you guys want to say that Donald Trump wanted to delegitimize the presidency by saying there might be some actual some fraud at play here. You guys want to say there were slave patrols, then there was a police force. Ergo, police all racist. And do you know who that harms most? That harms Black Americans, most people who live in urban communities who need the police.
I hate that argument, but we'll get to it because we got to get to this video. I hate that argument.
But we literally made it 1 minute in and we about to fucking die, bro. Like, Jesus Christ.
Middle of nowhere in Idaho. So this is a claim. I don't want you to take my word for it, that you've heard for many years, and now they want to teach it in schools.
You see who
bro,
wants to
impressive.
You see how this is? He's a propagandist and he's good at it.
I was about to say, it's almost impressive how good he is at this. Like, I'm not bullshitting. Like, there's a reason why he got so many followers, guys. Like, I'm listening to this, and the reason why we keep stopping now, I'm gonna try not to, at least for a while. Every sentence, every syllable has a reason, and it's really actually impressive how he pulling it off. Like, there's no wasted words here. Like, everything he is saying is misleading for a different reason. Like, there's so many different moving parts in how he is misleading people. It's almost impressive. But sorry, CJ, I'll pass it back to you, and we watch the video.
And we got this guy. We got this guy on the screen. But let's listen.
Oh Lord.
Built upon
So
them.
his example is bringing up Jim Clyburn as if Jim Clyburn. I mean, come on. Oh, come
Oh
on.
my Lord.
That was born out of slavery. Here's a montage for you.
Law enforcement, all built upon them. Policing itself started out as slave patrols. We know that.
Wrong.
And so what we
Do
got to
we?
do is stop trying to put a Band-Aid on this problem and attack the institution that is perpetuating this culture.
This
There's a
is
lot of
not a
weird
training issue. This is much
The
more
guy on
deeply
Fox really looks
rooted
like
in
Superman with
understanding the
alcoholic
history of
hepatitis,
policing.
doesn't he?
Most
Right,
people
Bear,
don't
yeah.
know that the forefathers of what is our modern day policing were slave patrols.
For much of US history, law enforcement meant enforcing laws that were explicitly designed to subjugate black people. Some of America's first law enforcement units were the slave patrols tasked with capturing and returning people who'd escaped from slavery.
Well, you know, it's kind of ironic because the original constables that we had before an official police force were based on Old England law, where they had a system of police over there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but he wants to. You know what? Look,
That's cute.
His
But
point-
I have two videos. It's cute, but go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
you know,
his
people-
points are
you know,
relevant.
You're poor, you're tired, you're hungry, you're mediocre host. We understand it. But there is something that
Mexican
rubs us. Yeah, Mexican racist
You're
that rubs us the wrong way about a person.
I
who-
just noticed. Do they have on bulletproof vests? Did you? I just noticed both of them because when they pan to the other ones, I'm like,
there's
yes,
something
that's
that
a
rubs
bulletproof
us,
vest.
Mexican
That's a
racist
bulletproof
that rubs us the
vest?
wrong way.
I don't know if they probably doing a gag or something because obviously these people are just clowns. So then maybe like an inside joke we don't get. Like that's only
Clown shit. That's our next show is gonna be called Clown Shit. When we talk about stuff like this. Let's go.
About
Region
a
theory.
person who sounds like everyone we left telling us how we should do it here.
When we only copied them in
Right.
the first place.
For a small part. And
Trying
then
to
we
get rid of
improved
it.
upon
Well, for the police, yeah.
So again, like I said, there's a bunch of censorship at play here, and these are the general claims. It's important because you'll even see this is what bothers me. You have leftist pseudo intellectuals who make these arguments, and then you have people on the right. You have conservative pseudo intellectuals, and I mean pseudo intellectuals who say, "Well, this isn't really widespread. This is a fringe idea." No, it's not. It's not only no longer a fringe idea; they have a forced captive audience with your children, and then in university, 16 years, Joe Biden.
White people, you put fear into them. The way you're gonna do it is children. This is how they sell shit to them. You put a blonde little girl, 3-year-old girl with blue eyes on a commercial. You can sell anything to white America.
So and to make your point, he's selling his point to his audience, but we are 3 minutes and 8 seconds in. I haven't heard one source. I ain't heard anything cited. CJ, you just watched my show earlier, right? You guys saw my show. Sometimes you gotta get annoyed. I'm like, wait, let me show you guys I'll show my receipts on everything I talk about, right? Especially with the Israel-Palestine story I did earlier today. I'm like, yo, oh guys, wait, let me pull this up. Because I don't want you guys just to trust me. I do that so I can prove like I'm not just making this shit up, guys. Here's this article. This is a 3-minute rant where he's talking about the history of policing. Where the fuck is your sources, bro? There's no professors that are being cited, nothing.
Nick, let me tell you what I
bro.
have written
Believe me.
down as a note. Let me tell you has I written down as the first note of the video. Why don't you talk about why don't you talk about your reasons to debunk until after 4 minutes and 30 seconds? That's when they really even start talking about it, Nick, because they don't have a point. What they do, though, is they spend 4 minutes instilling fear in you.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, CJ. I just not thought about that because you brought that up. You see how he immediately brought up Jim Clyburn on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
He is programming them to, hey, play the red-blue game. Red-blue game. Hey, look, the blue guy said this. I'm about to say this. Believe in me. Like, that is actually that's a good point. And maybe that is intentional. Like, I think they're a pretty good propagandist because I don't give them any benefit of doubt as a political analyst, right? So I'm analyzing what he's trying to do. He's trying to propagandize people, and he's killed. Like, he gets fucking way more views. Like, that would be an understatement to say that. So it's like he's fucking killing the game as a right-wing propagandist, and we see why. Like 3 minutes in, no sources, nothing, just vibes, bro. And I mentioned earlier, some people got mad at me when I said, like, bro, There are white dudes that just say shit on camera and they just say it confidently, and that's all they need. That's all they need for success. Like Voss would say shit like, "Y'all think we should vote for Joe Biden because they're the lesser of two evils." He's a white guy. He's confident, so he can say shit that makes no sense. Oh, he's just a confident white dude, so it must be true. That's what he's doing. That's the whole speech that he's giving right now.
And where does that come from? Again, all roads lead
Joe
back
Biden
to
wants
slavery.
that. Teach this to kids and then make sure that taxpayer dollars fund that kind of education for 16 years.
He didn't throw in white kids and he didn't throw in tax dollars. Like, what else do they need to complete this Republican thing? What else?
Yeah, thank you for explaining how education works. We all know, bro. We all know how it works.
Let's go through this claim by claim. The most popular claims. If you see that I've missed one or you have some questions, we'll take them in chat later on Mug Club, or just submit them. Comment below which ones you think we've missed, because it's hard to kind of put this together.
And just quickly, we did math wrong yesterday. It's 17 years. Kindergarten 1 through 12 plus 2 plus 2.
So you also saw the tweet?
Yeah, I did see the tweet. They're like, you guys suck at math. Okay,
so let's go to some of these claims here. That police were formed specifically to catch runaway slaves.
The structure of this country, whether we want to admit it or not, is based on racism.
Did someone hook a battery up to the sink before he came onto the show?
Slave trade. And the country was built
Saw
on the
you in
backs
Home
of
Alone.
Black folks who made this country as great as it is, whatever that means. And until we recognize that, and specifically in policing, it was built on slave catching. That's the institution of policing was built on slave catching.
Now, the only legitimate excuse for Kamal Bell, comedian, by the way, you always know they're comedian when they have to remind you, looking that way on that show is if immediately before, and he said, yeah, I'm ready for my hit. I just got to wash my hands.
Bro, this is so cringe, bro. Like the one thing I know about this dude is that he's one of the people that's a failed comedian. So he failed as a comedian, so he became a YouTuber, like Sam Cedar did. So it's like, bro, that's why you failed as a comedian, sir. Like that was horrific. Like, was that supposed to be funny?
I didn't get that at all. It was terrible. So let's just act like that didn't happen, I guess. Let's continue, because that was terrible.
We got to talk to Samson.
So, okay, that's the basis of it. Look,
God.
this is one thing, too. We're going to do a segment tomorrow on DC statehood. Does it pass a sniff test? And what do I mean, sniff test?
Wait,
you go, hold on a second. Okay,
are you
start
moving
with a
on?
macro view.
Wait,
Then
hold
we'll-
up. Are you moving on? Yeah, you didn't debunk the point. Hey, he played a clip of that guy on Fox News talking about the slave patrols, and then he made a corny ass joke and then moved on. Does his audience realize that he didn't even fucking debunk the point that the clip that he just played? Maybe he might get to it, but it seems like he's moving on. But sorry, keep playing.
Nick, we're at 4 minutes and 34 seconds. Nothing about debunking, nothing. Okay, so let's listen some more.
This is why the police exist. With DC statehood, I hadn't done a ton of research on it recently, because I remember the first time I looked it up, people were saying, why is DC the only place it's not a state? And I went, it's a good question. Why is it? And I looked it up and I said, to be impartial. That makes sense. There's a lot of that completely makes sense as to why it would be different.
Right.
It's congruent with the other reasons that it's unique. Same thing here. You go, hold on a second. They say that it was created for, but wait, sniff test. Do other countries have police? Have there been police forces? Yes.
How was that a sniff test on? Because maybe I don't know if he's intentionally, Nick, misrepresenting what is being said. I don't know if he's saying, because what he's trying to say, what I'm hearing to his that he's trying to sleight of hand say to his audience is that these people that he's putting on TV is saying that the idea of police was like, hey, let's create a police department and our job is to catch slaves. That's not what they're saying. They're saying we had slave patrols and slave catching. The idea and how that worked was the basis of creating. That's what we're saying. And that's what I'm trying. Is he? You think he's intentionally missing that point, or do you really think he misses that?
Like, there's two ways you can interpret this. That he's probably a dumb fuck who don't even understand what we were saying. We're saying that the system of policing is inherently built on racism and as a class construct. Him bringing up the fact that policing exists in other countries that do the same thing quite literally does not debunk our point in the least. Like, why we even like? I'm like, maybe we should play some more here, but I literally don't even understand why he thinks his arguments debunk ours. It's like you play. It's like arguing.
If you have white supremacy taking over the entire planet, that could be a reason. If you have white supremacy, if you have classism. I mean, all the reasons you would create is the point that I'm making, Nick. Like all the reasons the reason to have a police force, the same reasons that was here. Like what is the difference? But how does that change American policing to me, which is a unique style of policing of its creation? Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, he knows his audience is pretty stupid because we watched like 5 minutes of the show and we can't stop laughing at how dumb they are. So there are people who watch his entire show. There are people that pay subscribers. So they knows already that these people are dumb as a box of rocks. So look at the title. The title is Debunking the Slave Patrol. So his argument doesn't have to make sense because his argument is not even debunking what he's claiming is debunking. His audience, all they have to see is the title that says Debunking Slave Patrol. They will hear his argument and they don't like, oh, I guess he debunked it.
That's been debunked. That's been debunked by who? Like by what?
Like,
That's been debunked.
There's nothing he said that even come close to debunking it. But we can continue because this is man.
I just want to get I want to get to the it's getting close. I want to get to the guest they have where he actually tries to make a point against it. And I hope it's getting close. I thought it was after 4 minutes and a half, but it's been 5 minutes.
I remember this dude debated Vosh. And Vosh, that's when Vosh was like, I don't think black people should be paid reparations. I think it should be a class thing. I'm like, bro, you lost immediately. You lost immediately. I roasted his ass at that. That tweet went viral. But I'm like, bro, guys, listen to this. Imagine me debating this dude. Like, just imagine. And then Vosh was like, they was going toe to toe. They were going toe to toe. Like, bro, this is
light work. This is light work right here. This is light work.
I debated Garland
Every
Nixon,
society
bro. What compared to Garland Nixon, bro? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Ancient Rome, Augustus Caesar created a police force. In England, in the 13th century, they formed a body of constables and justices to keep the peace, which we mimicked here.
Wait, all you're doing is bringing up points of how other countries and how they created their police force. There was no internet. People in Greece can go, how did they do it in Africa? What is your fucking point? This is so elementarily can be just taken apart, Nick. Like, who's believing this shit?
Made here in the United States, pretty similar. I think it was 1630s is when we did it. And also, by the way, today, every non-white society still has police forces in one form or another. Granted, it might be Coney, but you take what you can get. The point is, are all these African countries racist? Are all these Middle Eastern countries racist? It doesn't pass that initial sniff test.
No one from Brett Baer to anybody else that we saw there from CNN or MSNBC.
This the guy is just going to make a point. So this is the person that's supposed to be the person who's giving the points.
Said one word like, well, there's
to be fair, I don't know if some of them did down the line or corrected after the segment.
I've watched a lot of these too, and I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
so you're right. If they did do it, then that's.
We don't want another 1617 scandal in our midst, folks.
Camel or whatever his name is.
It's 16 Gate.
Didn't get changed. He didn't get challenged.
No, he didn't. Well, and also, so we had the system of constables.
Better than 18 Gate.
And then the first modern police department, it was created in Boston in 1838. Immediately,
the first modern police force, by his own description, was 1838. Nick, how long was slavery going on, Nick? When was slavery going on, Nick? The first slaves, talking about 1692. You're talking about when slavery's about to end in the next 10 years. So what happened before that?
Apparently, all the slaves that ran away before that got away. CJ, there was no slave patrol. There was nothing.
What is he
before?
About?
What was that? 1838. That he said. Apparently, before 1838, every slave that ran just got away. If the master and the dog didn't catch him, he's gone. Then they're like it's so stupid.
It's so stupid. Like you're just forgetting like literally over 100 years of history here.
Immediately followed by New York City. I believe it was in Albany, Chicago, Philadelphia, a lot of Northeast places where slavery was outlawed. So again, this is something they'll make the claim. Well, look at these slave patrols. Sure, they existed, but to try and say that the Minneapolis Police Department today is.
He just said, sure, they existed. He glanced over the most important part. Sure, they existed. And what happened to them? Explain that.
Based on some kind of a slave patrol from the antebellum South, doesn't pass the sniff test. So then we change into a modern police force, organized, sort of bureaucratic police departments. They were formed specifically in urban.
So Nick, we can stop it here with these people. Because you heard the point. They don't have a point. They just literally say it's not that. It started here and that's it. There's no other point to it. It started here on this date and that's it. There's no
He
other
was like,
point.
why do people got police in other countries that ruining slavery? Like, bro, we imprison 1/4 of the world's prison population. The American police killed 3 people per day. Name it. We're the other country that has civil asset forfeiture, redlining, broken windows policing. You don't even understand the point. I explained on the show before. Like when you look at Cuba, when you look at the DPR, like their police is operate in a completely different way than our police. So him saying, "Oh well, police exist in other areas," that does not address our argument that American policing is rooted in slave patrols. How I'm asking you, how did his point debunk that fact? That fact that American policing is designed to uphold racial hierarchies and protect class interest. There's nothing in his statement that debunks that. He just said, "Well, cops exist in other places." Okay, their cops are fundamentally different than American policing that we are describing.
Exactly. I mean, London, they don't even carry guns. They are because he's saying the concept of policing, just the concept, and that's not. We're saying the basis on the style, the structure of our policing, how we police the community is based on that. That's not the concept that. Go ahead.
Yeah, remember? Sorry, CJ, but remember when I said earlier in the stream when I'm like, name a time where we had the current modern police force. So what he's describing is what abolitionists have been saying we wanted. There's different forms of public safety, and there are a lot of different ways indigenous people have led societies that is not like our insane police state. We are calling for a more community-based approach to safety and security. It's safety and security, which is housing, healthcare, education, that kind of things, and allow the community to take charge instead of having some big state fucking capitalist thugs. That's brand new. So anyway, let's go ahead.
Hey, I'm gonna get to the next video, but I forgot we're supposed to be doing this already. Okay, so like this video, we're at 98 likes, but we got 147 people watching, so that's another almost 50 likes we can get. So if you like more people will show up in the comments. You'll have better discussions. It's all the circle of live streaming life. Let's get back to the video. So this one is entitled History of Policing. This is about a 4.5-minute video. Let's listen. It's a lot of good information in this video also.
Hi, I'm Randa Fattah.
And I'm Ramtin Arabou.
We co-host NPR's history podcast, Throughline, to help give some historical context to the police killing of George Floyd and so many other Black people in this country. This week, we're bringing you the deep history of policing in America.
We wanted to understand how the relationship between police and the Black community had evolved to one so bloody and tragic.
So we reached out to this historian.
My name's Khalil Gibran Muhammad. I teach at the Harvard Kennedy School.
In his book, The Condemnation of Blackness, Khalil lays out a historical argument for how Black people have been criminalized over the past 400 years in the US. And he does that by telling parallel narratives about the history of policing in the North and the South. These stories share one key feature: the use of brutal force to control Black Americans.
Policing in America.
So I do have something written down. Let me see. I thought I had something written down here. No, but I do want to make a point because this video is going to talk about. Actually, let me make the point after. So let's let the video make the point, and then I'll make it.
America started in the mid-1600s with the Boston Watch, essentially a neighborhood watch group. But some of the first police forces in the South were created to control enslaved Black people. They would come to be known as slave patrols. Almost all white men had to serve in these patrols.
Their duties were written into law, like the slave patrol statute from Louisiana in 1835.
Arrest any slave or slaves, whether with or without a permit, who may be caught in the woods or forest with any fire or torch, which slave or slaves thus arrested shall be subjected to corporal punishment not exceeding 30 stripes. So the tying together early on, the surveillance the deputization essentially of all white men to be police officers, and then to dispense corporal punishment on the scene are all baked in.
Zimmerman, right? He's in charge. He's the white guy. He's out. He is tasked with also helping keeping, you know, the blacks in line, and he was able to dish out corporal punishment that was deadly. So I'm just making a connection of culture, just the thinking. We think that these things, that how we think and the way things are have no basis. It is based in the propaganda instead of based in a long history. So let's listen some more.
From the very beginning.
The Civil War eventually brought an end to slavery in America. But for most Black people in the South, it didn't fundamentally change their lives.
And by the early 20th century, the KKK would emerge to enforce control over Black citizens in the South. And this pushed millions of Black citizens to flee to northern, progressive cities as part of what would become known as the Great Migration.
Police officers receive African American migrants.
Is this how your family got to Missouri? Do you know if that's how you got there?
My dad
The great-
grew up in Alabama, so
that's what I'm saying, because that I think that sort of proves it without me knowing, because your dad is in Alabama, now you're in Missouri. The Great Migration may have gotten you there. And I remember there was two pipelines, one to Detroit, Michigan, and Chicago, from people having distinct family ancestries to, I think it was Georgia and Texas or Alabama, because of the Great Migration. So just curious, There's not anything in this story, just curious to know. Let's listen here.
In the same way that their white neighbors and community peers did, which is with contempt and hostility. When a white person throws a Molotov cocktail into a new...
So I'm going to rewind a few seconds, because he's pointing out this point that all those slave patrols, because there weren't plantations in the North, weren't in the North, that doesn't mean that the policing didn't have the same original goal of inflicting brutality on Black people. And he's talking about here how the Great Migration had a reaction. These Black people didn't just show up and everything was fine and dandy. The white people that was in the North didn't like it, called the police, and then that's where he begins.
Police officers receive African American migrants in the same way that their white neighbors and community peers did, which is with contempt and hostility. When a white person throws a Molotov cocktail into a new Black homeowner on a street that had previously been all Irish or all Polish or all German, the police come and they arrest the Black family and defend the white mob. And this happens time and time over.
So the victim gets arrested. Doesn't that ring true? How many times have you heard that story? The Black person called the police because they're the victim, and then they get arrested. They're checking him out. Well, let me see your ID. What do you got? Warrants you got? And it's like, I called you. I'm the victim.
So I've seen quite a few videos like that. And I want you guys to remember, and I laid this out in my article as well, the police, even after the Black codes was gotten rid of, they will actually help coordinate. And there are many anecdotal stories that is written through historical journals. Once again, these are people that actually study the history. They get anecdotal evidence for these things happening. They coordinated lynchings. Like they will use their inside information to help lynch mob find Black Americans to lynch, and then they will help cover it up. Going to the racial ties that the police had even after slavery was abolished, even after the Black codes. Like this is during the era of lynching. But you can continue the video. That's just another part that came to my mind when I saw this.
Absolutely. All right.
Over and over again, they are policing the racial norms of white supremacy from the very beginning in the North.
They're policing the racial norms of white supremacy.
And this happens time and time over and over again. They are policing the racial norms of white supremacy from the very beginning in the North.
Black skin becomes equated with criminality.
And according to Khalil Gibran Muhammad, the system hasn't fundamentally changed since then. He says that pointing out the problem is clearly not sufficient to fix the system.
Because the problem has been known for a century. The evidence has been presented for a century. The recommendations for change, for holding police.
A century, Nick. Have you ever, when you were doing the 10 demands, did you think back to that? Or not even just the 10 demands. These same things is a century old. The same issues with black men, police killing them, these are century old. Still having the same problem. This is the inherent problem with trying to fix an entity whose duties was this, and now you're trying to extract those duties from that from their job.
So there was a report in 2004 where surprisingly even the FBI laid out how white supremacists infiltrated the police. And what happened after the Civil Rights Act passed, white people were like, okay, we got to find a way to do this the official way. And you had a lot of people who had connection to the KKK, who was in the highest levels of policing in the South, who gave a lot of their friends jobs. And they were like, okay, since we can't do it as civilians, we did go through the other proper channel that we already been using. So yet they had like the inside outside game. So they're like, all right, let's just go straight on the inside now. Obviously, they still had the outside game, but they became more tactical with it. So they know the role of the police. That's why it's funny when they deny. They know what it's for. That's why when you got the Amy Coopers, when you got all these white people who call the police on them, they know what the fuck is. They know what the fuck this is. They just won't say it. Y'all know what this is. Like if any white person that wanted to die, what we are saying, you know what this is when you dial that goddamn number against one of us. Like we played that video of that white lady Karen, who she literally attacked a black Muslim lady. Why will you call the cops when you attacked a lady? Like that's the last thing you want to do. If you commit a crime, why will you call the cops? She committed a crime, call the cops because she's that goddamn sure that they will have her back. And guess what?
Right.
They did. Google Victoria's Secret Karen, because she went viral after that because Black Twitter was not having it. If you guys want to know more about that story. But go ahead, CJ.
All right, let's continue. I do got a couple more videos. These a lot of interesting information in each video, tidbits of information. Let's listen to some more.
Police officers accountable for charging them with criminal offenses when they behave criminally. It's a century of the same story playing out over and over again. It seems to me that's what's possible is recognizing that police officers and police agencies are incapable of fixing themselves. And so the question that has to be asked in the wake of George Floyd, and I think this question is being asked and answered by more white people than I've seen in my lifetime, is do white people in America still want the police to protect their interests over the rights and dignity and lives of Black and in too many cases, brown, indigenous, and Asian populations in this country?
Our whole country is waiting to hear the answer to that question.
I already know it. What are you
that
talking
was
about?
Historian Khalil Gibran.
What you gonna say, Nick? I already know it. What you gonna say, Nick?
No, I think I'm being too hard on the dude because I think this is story. I think he was asking more like now that I look, I think it's more of a rhetorical question, but it's not a good question. But but now I think about, I think it was more of a rhetorical question. But we all know the answer to answer. And I'm not talking about 10 years ago. I'm talking about right now. We know the answer. Will white people willing to give up the privileges that they have with the police? No. Both parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, are running on funding the police more. And I'll show you guys the polls. defund the police is extremely popular, but that's despite white people, including white Democrats. I explained how defund the police is popular among black people, Latinos, and younger people, but then white people is underwater in both. So the answer to that question is no, but I think he was asking more rhetorical, I think.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That's the answer, guys. That's the answer. They're not ready right now.
All right, so this one is called The Origin of Policing. This guy we'll see on 2 different videos. He's actually a professor somewhere. They're going to say it in another video, I think, or maybe this video. But let's listen.
I think there's a lot of people who say, yeah, I know the police
actually is written right here. Let me Associate Professor of Journalism and Media Studies at Rutgers University.
broken. Let's just enact the reforms that will fix it. But the question,
and believe it or not, this is from the Washington Post. Little snippet here.
I think there's a lot of people who say, yeah, I know the police are broken. Let's just enact the reforms that will fix it. But the question for me is, if the police are broken, when did they break?
That's the question. Remember I was saying how you were asking a question that's saying, like, when people say, let's go back, we got to just change it. That's the question he's asking is like, well, when did that happen? When was it okay? He kind of elaborates more, but that's essentially what.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What year in American history did the police break? It seems really trite to say if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. But nothing illustrates that more than the history of policing.
Policing, in one form or another, has existed since colonial days. In the form of night watches, local sheriffs, and militias. But it wasn't until the 19th century that northern cities such as Boston created modern police departments as we would recognize them today. These northern departments were not the first example of a uniformed, publicly funded law enforcement institution in America.
So the guy who had the debunking video, she's saying how, yeah, that was there first, but these aren't the first police in the United States. And she goes into it here, which we were just pointing out, like, then what happened 100 and some odd years?
His miss is so giant. It was such a giant miss.
America.
By the time the northern colonies were afoot in the 17th century, the idea of keeping track of the most valuable asset in the United States, that is enslaved Africans, animated much of what we recognize today as law enforcement.
I like to give the people the source for the name. So Professor of History, Race, and Public Policy, Harvard Kennedy School. That's where this guy's from.
Much of what we recognize today as law enforcement.
In the 1700s, the South saw the rise of official, salaried slave patrols, whose task was to capture, control, and brutalize enslaved people.
Capture, control, and brutalize slaves. What are the jobs of the occupying forces, slave patrols in our neighborhoods now? Capture, control, and brutalize. The jobs, their tasks, their duties have not changed.
The initial acts that empower slave patrols and militias were acts that basically empowered all white people to surveil and punish all black people.
These slave patrols were required to serve a tour of duty, usually up to a year. Individuals were compensated for their time, but they were also penalized if they did not show up for their required service.
All white people, including white children, were expected to enforce so-called slave codes.
All white people's responsibilities. And I have a short video on slave codes too. I couldn't do this video without briefly talking about that. So let's continue. A lot of information, Nick.
These laws were meant to prevent enslaved people from organizing or rebelling. It was against the law, for example, for enslaved people to leave their plantations, gather without a white person present, learn to read or write.
These two I want to talk about. Gather without a white person present or learn how to read or write. What's your take, Nick? I mean, I kind of have an idea where you're going to go, but not being able to gather without a white person around is saying what? Isn't that showing fear of revolt, maybe fear of something, or what
You wanna
is
know
your
that?
take on that?
You want to know what that remind me of? That remind me of the people saying, "Oh, you can't protest at people's homes. Oh, you can't
Yes.
protest like that," because you see how they are establishing rules. They're establishing, make sure you can't resist in the proper way. That is what they're doing. They make sure the slaves can't resist in the proper way. So when they tell us that we can't protest at people's homes, for example, that property damage is off limits, that's them saying, "Oh, you cannot protest in an effective way, or we'll fuck you up."
Mhm.
So what's the difference? What's the difference between them tear gassing us because we protest and this? Well, it's rooted in the same ideology. That's the first immediate take I have when I see that. So back to you, CJ.
Absolutely. Let's continue, get through this video.
Or even defend themselves if attacked by a white person. After the Civil War, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery except as a punishment for a crime.
The South immediately moves to exploit this loophole by passing a series of crime bills known as black codes, which essentially criminalize.
Immediately moves to establish because if you move the function of slavery from my plantation to prison, then how do you keep newly freed slaves and return them back to the slave state that you want? You just put them in prison and you recreate the laws that do that. And then you have these private prisons that's making money off of it's like this whole private prison selling selling labor starts from this, is rooted in slavery. So your vice president Kamala, the Yas Queen or whatever the fuck you call her, you know what I'm saying? Like that's her. Let's continue. This guy's good. He's actually in another
The
video.
Clintons literally used slaves
all
too in
forms.
Arkansas in the governor's mansion. Just letting you guys know. Go ahead.
Of black freedom. They criminalize unemployment by adopting these very broad vagrancy laws that essentially criminalize any black person who can't prove that they're working.
Just think about that, Nick. You're a newly freed slave, or you're a slave, or you're free, but you're really living in the residual effects of slavery and the resentment that it's over. What black person in that state can provide a job? What like the expectation? Only white people provided can find work from, and it's an intensely racist society that's having this hiccup behind slavery now going away. So he can't get a job, and now it's against the law that he can't find a racist person to hire him. The ridiculousness of these laws. And go ahead.
And look at the resiliency of our people. That
exactly,
despite all these laws, they were still able to raise families because that's why we're here, right? We got ancestors who grow through this, right? They provided, they lived, and they survived despite this insane society that was put on them. And despite this, we didn't look towards revenge. FYI. What does that say about our people? You got a lot of white racists who want to say, "Oh my God, black people are violent." Bro, we didn't even look for revenge. We just like, "Go, can y'all just let us be?" Like that's all we've been like. We marched like, "Bro, can y'all just chill? Just chill."
Yeah.
That's all we didn't. We like if you look at the demand, especially for our black leadership, bro. We never like really like all right, give this country back. We about fucking eye for eye. All the people we all killed, we about to kill them. No, we was like, bro, just chill. Let's go. Let's live, bro. And then that's. So anyway, I think I'm gonna take a positive angle on this part and just say, look at the resiliency of our people despite all this shit. So back to you, CJ.
Absolutely. Another quick shout out. Like this video. Thank you for those that like. We jumped those likes up by like 45. If we can jump it up another 30, we're at 143. If we can get 30 more likes, we can get some more people in here to view, and then we can get over 200 people watching. So we can get these comments, and then I promise you, we're gonna get to comments when Nick and I get on. It is hard to get to comments because we have both like to talk a lot, so let's continue.
Any African American who challenges the terms of work, barters or brokers for a better deal, turns down a terrible offer, walks away from an abusive employer or a relationship with a landowner, by definition becomes a vagrant and by definition becomes a criminal. They could then be sold at sheriff's auction back to the very person who had just claimed that they were a criminal by virtue of not accepting a fair labor deal.
This practice of convict leasing earned enormous revenues for the states who lent out their prisoners, and huge profits for the companies using this prison labor in mining.
Just think of that, Nick. Slavery was not outlawed, bro. You tell me this doesn't look just like slavery? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Is that what you're trying to look at? I mean, just look at this. Like, all you did was say slavery's over, and then you round up all the same slaves, put them in prison, and then rent them out to people to do the same work.
Hey, CJ, I was just at the Casey Tenants rally, right? And I'll tell you guys, when I was reporting on it, there was a lot of anecdotal stories that came from a lot of organizers, the leaders of Casey Tenants. There's this black guy, and I apologize, I don't remember his name. I had to look through my footage on my phone, but he shared his anecdotal experience, and he was in prison for 17 years, and he shared how he did back-breaking labor. He was working for the prison for nearly nothing, and he said he felt like he was a slave, and he literally said it during his speech, like during when he was talking, giving his presentation at KD10. That's why I immediately thought about this, and he was like, "Yo, slavery's not gone, man." We still got prisoners that fucking are literally just working as slaves. Look at California, the quote unquote blue state, uses slaves as firefighters, and then they don't allow them to be professional firefighters when they leave. How fucked up is that?
Yeah,
that's why I see when I saw this. Because I got a real example, a real anecdotal experience that I reported on the ground where a guy explained like what it actually mean. Like he talking about how dehumanizing it was. Essentially, like you're a slave, bro. You working for like 5 cents, 10 cents. It was something crazy. So anyway, you guys see the parallel to what's going on today and what's going on then.
It's just been rebranded and rebranded and rebranded. It's the same shit. Like, this is the same sort of. Anyway, let me get through this before I start ranting.
Mining, railroads, and other industries.
I'll be right back, CJ.
Right on.
The new laws effectively re-enslaved those who had just gained their freedom and required new police to take over the former duties of the slave patrols.
When you have Black people serving in political offices for the first time, when you have Black landowners in abundance, when you have Black professionals, there are Reconstruction era judges, the stakes are even higher for this everyday performance of Black subservience to white domination. It is the police who will ultimately serve that function of reminding Black people, in many cases, their lower status in society.
What we see is that general way of thinking about race and thinking about disorderly people never really changes. It's kind of woven into the DNA. But it's not just because individual police officers are racist. It's because the institution was literally created to make sure that wealthy and powerful people could extract labor.
This is the point that I make about the possibility of reforming the police state. You literally have to just throw it out and start with a completely different idea. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, you can't start out as I don't even want to, you can't start it out as a, rusted car and then say, and think that somehow you can reform that and there's not going to be any sort of rusted car residue. No part of the car is still going to have rust. Like, this is what the car is. The DNA of policing is this. So you can't, because the amount of reform that's needed in order to extract away the brutality, the racism, the amount of changes needed would literally mean you're starting over. Like, it's not like, so if you want, if the police state is a house that needs a makeover, changing some windows does what? if the house is rotted, termite damage? You get what I'm saying? Like what?
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
what does that do to change the window? What does that do to upgrade the door? What does that do to the if the because all you're doing, Nick, is you're putting a new roof on, you're putting some new windows on, and you're putting a new door on to the same thing that has the termite problem, to the same thing that has water damage, to the same thing that you still haven't structurally fixed. So that's the point to me of why reform will always be lagging behind, severely lagging behind. Like the reforms that we get accomplished now are reforms that we should have had 40 years ago, for example. So let me move to the next video before we. I thought we was on longer than we've only been on for about an hour and 15. So there is another video here. I'm covering this one here. Now this one kind of goes into a little bit more. I think this is the one I sent you, but actually, let me bring up this article first, Nick, because this video or this stream, I wanted to talk about the origins and also correlate them. And that's why I'm so happy you're on, because we kind of got into the origins. We'll get back to that. But let's now start making some more connections to what the current situation is. And I'm going to do that by bringing up this article here. It's Common Dream. This was written a few days ago on the 6th, like 5 days ago. Okay. Is that nice and big? Yeah. Let me actually make it slightly bigger.
Yeah, and this looks like this is a new investigation too.
Yes. According to the article, yes.
Yeah, investigation shows hundreds of U.S. cops being trained by far-right extremists. Yeah, I was hyped. I remember you sent me this, and I saw today. I was like, "Oh shit, we got a new one! We got a new one." Cause I'm always on the look for
ridiculous. This is
more
so
receipts.
ridiculous.
You guys know I just literally collect receipts, bro. That's literally all I know.
Yeah,
like, we got another one, so we can dive into.
But listen to this, and this is a shout out to the writer Kenny Stansel. I think that's how you say his name. The subline or the subtext is bad training is instilling bad behavior, said one criminal justice reform advocate. So hundreds of cops across the United States have been taught by individuals who espouse far-right extreme views, according to a new investigation that was published Friday. This was very recent, last Friday. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was just saying real quick, just Dave Grossman. I covered him on the show before. The guy who wrote Killology.
Yeah.
He trained military and police people. He is a celebrity. He booked like 200 days out of the year. I mean, so yeah, that's what they talk about. By the way, I give you guys real examples. Well, Dave Grossman is the most obvious one. There are a lot of smaller ones too, but they dominate police training.
It says this is according to a new investigation that was published Friday to sound the alarm on a burgeoning and unregulated private train. So it's private training.
Yes, they make a fortune. Like the people, like there would be military people, not even just Dave Grossman. They would be like foreign military police people, and they will retire and they were like, all right, we're gonna go around travel training people. And that's why whenever you have people that say we want to do reform by giving police more training, I'm like, you are a dipshit. You guys are literally just giving money to Dave Grossman. You guys giving money to the worst people whenever like, oh, we just got to train them more. Who you think's gonna train them? Dr. Cornel West? Dr. Cornel West he's not giving the fucking speeches. No. It's some Trump voter, some Trump motherfucker. Like that's who trained these people. They're like, we're gonna have a sensitivity program with some guy who have no sensitive bone in his body. That's the training program. The liberals always say that's the answer, right?
So Reuters identified 5 law enforcement trainers. So maybe one of them is mentioned here, Nick. 5 law enforcement trainers who have been hired by police and sheriff departments nationwide, despite their support for right-wing militia groups, including the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and 3 Percenters. The QAnon conspiracy, which basically claims the Democrat and Hollywood stars belong to a cabal and a Satanist pedophile, and
they didn't have to throw in the parts and stuff in there. Like, I get the point they're making. I'm not like punching them in the face over it, But come on, bro. Like you can make the point without going there. But anyway,
They went all in like, oh, this whole thing right here.
Think about it, if you're a right winger, like I said, the reason why I say I wouldn't include that because like if you're a right winger and you're against the police, like I told you guys, like 15% say they're down for defunding the police. And there's like 10% that says they're unsure. Dude, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Right.
And now, like a lot of these people, like it's tragic. But as soon as they read this article and they see you start saying,
you're throwing them off. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they tuning out now. So you can just bring up the fact that they are far right extremists, trained by far right extremists who believe in crazy ass shit. Sorry, go ahead, CJ.
Wait, what's the name of the guy you said? The guy that you know.
I don't know if they listed him in the argument, but the guy I know because
No, the one that trains Dave Grossman. Okay, because I see this name. I was wondering if the first name was Dave Grossman. Okay, so some use.
I'm gonna find a video on him while we do this. Let's see.
Some use bigoted instructional material that promote racist, misogyny, and transphobia, and many endorse constitutional sheriff philosophy, which maintains that the county sheriffs should refuse to uphold any law they find unconstitutional. What? Have you heard this before? Constitutional sheriff philosophy, I guess. But anyway, let's get into the people that they're talking about. So let's start here. Richard Whitehead, one of dozens of active and retired police officers or trainers who were listed in a database of members of Oath Keepers, has called for public execution of government officials he sees as disloyal to Trump. Reuters reported in 2020 social media posts, he urged cops to disobey COVID-19. Oh my God, this is not the same one because I read snippets. So obviously the snippets I read were the better parts, the nonpartisan parts, because
I get what they're saying though. I get the overall making.
Yeah, but I don't like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to be participating in regurgitating your partisan
like
sort of things.
Bring up Dave Grossman. Like all you gotta do is talk about the trainers, their ideology, what they believe in. Like this is what you gotta do. But
okay,
let's see what that one says.
This part, yeah, this is one of the snippets that I did read. So according to a 2019 analysis of historical FBI data published in the journal Criminology and Public Policy, the number of line of duty deaths has declined dramatically over the last 5 decades. Police deaths per 1,000 officers fell 75% over the past half century, from 81 to in 1997 to 70 to 20 in 2016. So deaths from felonies decreased each more than accidental deaths during that time. Shit, I should have prepared this more. Yeah, this is not the section I was looking for. But the point that I wanted to make, I think, were you able to find that, Nick?
Yeah, I have. I have this video. I'll share this video.
Yeah. So the point is still this, because this article, the part of the article, the snippet that I read, I don't want to have to look through it to find it. But the point of it is this: is that the United States Police or the United States Police state is still being trained or is being trained by far right groups. It's almost like this, Nick, and I'll stop sharing this so you can bring up yours.
Yeah, the group that brought up in the beginning, like a lot of those people are like far right militias. Like those are the people you need to highlight. But go ahead, CJ.
You want to say hi or something? Okay, say hi. My little girl came in. Say hi. Hi. That's Nick right there. That's Nick right there. Say hi. And now you got to go back, okay? Because this thing. You got to go back, okay?
Okay.
I'm almost done.
So I think it's been a while since I shared this video. So I think I want you guys to hear Dave Grossman speak. Now it's been a while since I showed this. So I'm literally just gonna play it. Like he's crazy enough. Well, I don't really need that much background. So let's check this video out. Let me.
You see,
what we want in a modern liberal democracy in our army is we want to turn violence on and off like a faucet.
Now, you make the point that while killing may be an inherent taboo. It's something that can be learned.
The only way you make a frightened person react in a certain way is to drill it into them, to make it a conditioned response.
Conditioned response. As soon as you see an enemy, you kill.
Every species, every mammal has a powerful built-in resistance against killing their own kind.
Now you begin the process of orchestrating the instruments together in a symphony of death and destruction.
Hey Nick, can you pause it? So what I hear when that first couple of lines he said is, I hear the philosophy of white supremacy that took control of the world. That's what I hear. That's the philosophy of it's. You see your enemy, you do what is he professing? When you see your enemy, like it's the same thinking of white supremacy that conquered so many, that is causing so much destruction. It's the same sort of thing is what I hear. But yeah, I just wanted to check that.
And he trains police officers to view us as the enemy. Like, dead serious. I really hope I found a. I'll let you just Google this one. It's a good one, but I really hope this is the one where he says it. But you see here at this screenshot, this is perfect time to pause it too. But you see, for the past 20 years, that psychopath that you just heard, Dave Grossman has been paid by local police departments to train officers on his philosophy of killing. But tell me more about how we should have more paid training for police officers. That money is going to this psychopath. All right, let me mute my mic and then we play some more. And then you see, I think they get into the part. Yeah, they get into the part where he does. You can see one of his police seminars, and based on my memory, it's been a while since I've seen it. It was batshit crazy. So let's check this out.
Once you've made the decision to take a human life, you're a transformed creature. You're a predator. What does the predator do? They kill. Only a killer can hunt a killer. Are you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically prepared to snuff out a human life in defense of innocent lives? If you can't make that decision, you need to find another job.
Shots fired! 321, we have shots fired. We have one suspect down. I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand up.
Consistently tell us that number one concern is what? Begins with an L. Lawsuits, liability, lawyers, I'm going to get sued. Do you understand you can be sued for not shooting? Stand there and do nothing while people are murdered. What do they call that? Cowardice, malfeasance, dereliction of duty, deliberate indifference, blood on your hands. We might call it desist.
So I want to point out that he is lying. So I explained many times on the show, the Supreme Court literally set a precedent that the police do not have a legal right to protect you. And that precedent was set because there was a school shooting where the police officers on duty ran. You know, the people who think the police should be in school to protect them. Then shit got real and they ran, so they sued them. And then obviously our system always side with the police, even to the absurd point of saying they don't have to protect you. So his antidote is already bullshit. By the way, I just had to let you guys know. I know you guys are smart. I don't want anyone to fall for this shit though. Like, everything he says is a psychopathic performance.
suicide. Because the one that dies next might be you, yes? There's only one way out. Know the law, know it well. Get every training opportunity you can. Don't be afraid of being sued. Everybody gets sued. Just a chance for overtime. Be afraid of being successfully sued. Ecclesiastes 3:3. Time to kill, time to heal.
I'm pausing it right here for a reason. Look, there's a line of these people who is trying to get an autograph from him to have him sign his book because he is a mini celebrity among the police. Why do you think he got his TV series? This little mini documentary about him. He's one of the most well-published authors in this industry. I don't know his number. I don't know the power rankings, but he killed the damn game. That's the point. So it's
Nick,
not like he's a friend figure. He's the main guy that police look to. And he booked 200 days a year.
He's like, but you notice, we just been watching different origin of slave patrol videos, origin of police videos, right? And what were we talking about? How white men have been tasked, white men were required, it was their responsibility. Who was in all that room? Who was in that room? Like it was their responsibility, right? It's the same thing, Nick. It's the same thinking that happened surrounding slavery. We just stopped thinking at it as it's based in slavery. This is the same thing. All he is doing is going around. He is the slave patroller, the slave catcher whisperer. He's going around training other slave patrolmen. He's training the other slave catchers, and they want his autograph because he's the best slave catcher. That's all this is.
You hear what you just said, too? The point he made. I don't think we had to play anymore because I think you guys get the point, right? So he was like, don't be afraid of getting sued. Be afraid of being sued and losing. Because you're like, what's the worst thing going to happen if you get sued? We take a vacation. And then we said it, they laughed.
They know nothing's going to happen
to them.
They
fucking know, guys. I'm telling you, they know.
Nothing's. Just like the slave patrols knew nothing was gonna happen to them. Just like they knew.
Yep, absolutely, CJ. Absolutely.
So this is another great video. Now, this video talks about how the 3 different regions shape their police forces, meaning the South, the North, and then I think she said somewhere else. But let's listen. Is another short video. I think this is the last one.
Modern policing just took a DNA test. Turns out it's 99 to 100% racist. Previously on Decoded, we talked about how the cops don't exactly spend their time keeping us safe, despite how often they tell us that's their job. Here's the TLDR. Addressing violent crime makes up a very small percentage of police work.
Look at this. 4%. How cops spend their time. 4% is violent crime. But if you turn on the TV, 99% is their job, is violent crime. 4%.
Work. Most crimes go unsolved, and the Supreme Court affirmed that officers...
Let me take this. So some of these numbers I'm just seeing, so that's why I'm kind of astonished if those are not that surprised. Let me play it without the sound to catch up real quick. Then I'll stop it right here. So I wanted to get a close look at these numbers. Unsolved crimes. Reported murders, 38%. Reported rapes, 66%. Reported robberies, 70%. So let me tell you this. If you were on a job and you completed 30% of your work, how long would you be on that job? If you completed 34% of your work, how long would you be on your job? Like, these numbers are astonishing to me. 4% of violent crime that the cops, how their time is spent, is on 4%. But like I was saying, but that's not what they project. It's like they're spending 99% of their time on violent crime. If you watch NYPD Blue, 99, all their whole day is tracking murderers, not writing tickets.
Yeah, and remember the propaganda they come up with all the time? Eric Adams is pushing it really heavy right now. How, oh my God, violent crime is up. Give us more money. Okay, motherfucker, you're not going to do anything about it anyway. That's why violent crime is up in the first place. Because you're not stopping it, sir. So why is the answer for is giving you more money? That doesn't make sense. But too many people are propagandized. They can't even get past that ridiculous logic. But go ahead, CJ.
And the Supreme Court affirmed that officers don't actually have a constitutional obligation to intervene if you're in danger. They're about as legally bound to your well-being as the stranger you asked to watch your laptop at the coffee shop. So what exactly are the police here to do, and how did we end up where we are now? Well, to answer those questions, we have to look at the history of policing and the institutions that provided a blueprint for modern law enforcement. And to all of our "what about the white people" commenters, don't worry. Unless you were uber wealthy, the police were initially formed to suppress your rights too. When we look back as far as the 1700s, policing has largely been centered around protecting property and maintaining a status quo shaped by white supremacy and capitalism. And that hasn't changed much over the last few centuries. Policing got its start regionally, from slave patrols in the South to Union strike breakers in the North and the Texas Rangers in the...
This is the part I was telling you about, how the three different sort of, you know, reasons some of them had to develop police forces. And I was saying it wasn't just, okay, so you have the slave patrols, but then you have them for capitalists, for the workers who are trying to unionize and trying to strike. We need a police force for them. So it was other reasons and different, you know, regionally, it was a different reason to have to establish it. That does not mean that it's not modeled in the structure after something else. You get what I'm saying? So I just wanted to make that point.
In the early Western US. And as history shows, the police have been pretty terrible everywhere. So let's get started with one of the most horrifying ancestors of modern law enforcement: slave patrols. During the early 1700s, plantation owners in the South developed slave patrols, the first form of law enforcement that resembles the police we see today. The thing is, at the time, the law treated Black people as property, not humans. So these groups were designed to punish and turn runaways or those who were seen as rebelling, aka people just trying not to be enslaved. Slave patrols restricted Black people's freedom of movement by employing lower and middle class white men who, armed with whips and guns, would patrol from sunup to sundown.
Wasn't that a room filled of lower middle class white men? Like that room with the guy. Like, I'm telling you, if you examine this shit, this is the same shit that's happening. Same shit, same reasoning, same sort of logic behind, but you're just, you know, you're eliminating explicitly saying we're going after niggers, and you think that makes it not racist.
According to historians, the duties of patrollers included apprehending runaways, monitoring Black movement, breaking up gatherings of Black people, randomly searching slave quarters, inflicting impromptu punishments, and suppressing insurrections.
You tell me that's not the list of what they do now, Nick. Look at that list. You tell me.
This is why the people who we cover this issue, because if you claim you're on the left and you miss this, like, this is to me, this is a very exposing issue. Because if you don't get this issue right, I mean, I didn't know you don't know anything about history. You don't know anything about how society works. Like, man, this is such a disqualifying issue for this reason. Like, the only way you can be for reform at this point is out of pure ignorance. These videos are everywhere. This information is readily available. You can literally just look into history with common sense.
Because if you're saying that you know all of this information and you still like, let's up the money, then something's wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Nick, maybe you're just giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're giving them you're saying the only way you're not for defunding the police is because you just don't know. Maybe we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe. We'll see. Let's see. Zoya. Okay, we can put her comment up in a second here. But let me just reread it. So, apprehending runaways. slave patrols of our cities. Monitoring black movement, they do that by patrolling our cities,
breaking up
occupying our
gatherings of
cities.
black people.
Yes, black breaking up, randomly searching. What it wasn't that stop and frisk?
Yep.
Stop and like literally, Nick. This stuff is not changed. Inflicting impromptu punishment.
Eric Gardner,
George Floyd,
George
Eric
Floyd.
Gardner.
Bro, come on, guys. Come
It's
on.
the same thing. Suppressing insurrection. We already know that part. Suppressing insurrections. Killing of Fred Hampton. It's the same shit, Nick. Same shit. But anyway, let's continue with the video. Here we go.
I wonder where the ideas for programs like Stop and Frisk and No-Knock warrants could have possibly come from. As historian Sally Haddon explained in her book on slave...
I forgot about that. The impromptu searches, those are no-knock warrants. Everything leads back to slavery, Nick. I am telling you, it's so many things we think in our lives now that, oh, that's just how it goes. No, where did it start from? Where did that start from? And it goes back to slavery.
Yeah, she's slaying this video.
Yes. I love how they make it not so boring so people watch it. So I do like that about this.
And she's not
Slave
screaming to the
patrols,
camera like I
quote,
do.
the history of police work in the South grows out of this early fascination by white patrollers with what African-American slaves were doing. And by the end of the Civil War and the Reconstruction era, local sheriffs became the primary law enforcement in the South, and they picked up right where the slave patrols left off by enforcing segregation and disenfranchisement. Despite the abolition of slavery in 1865, the giant gaping loophole in the 13th Amendment enabled police in the South to find new ways to force black people into exploitative labor. Because remember, the 13th Amendment states, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States except as a punishment for crime. As a result, lots of new anti-black laws emerged in the South, such as the Black Codes, which restricted black freedom and compelled newly freed slaves to work for low wages, as well as Jim Crow laws, which legally enforced segregation. There were also a host of other laws, such as vagrancy laws, that criminalized being unemployed, as well as localized legislation that prohibited black communities from gathering in groups to worship. These laws were passed in order to criminalize and push black people into prisons and convict leasing, a system of prison labor where prisoners were a source of free labor for white-owned businesses as punishment for a crime. Police used these racist rules as a pretext to surveil, abuse, and detain.
But Nick, think of this is the beginning, Nick. It's always been profitable to criminalize black men, and it starts here on this continent. You criminalize them so that you can sell their labor to white capitalists and get it for free or a nickel. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris learned that. Like they still
exactly.
Kamala Harris learned that. The Clintons learned that. The Democratic Party learned that. Like they still pushing this same shit. Like they pushed it hard with the black codes because they obviously they wanted to keep black people enslaved. But don't get me wrong, they still need to do it. They're still doing it aggressively because capitalism has not, it never has existed without slavery, right?
Ever, like Chris Tucker was saying.
Detain black people under the guise of justice. It's no coincidence that the focus on punishment and control during this time paved the way for the expansive systems of mass incarceration today. Because thanks to the 13th Amendment, prisons are still allowed to use inmates for labor and their own profit, often paying them less than $1 per hour, or in states like Georgia and Texas, paying them nothing at all. This is still legal. Sorry, let me rephrase. How in the is this still legal? Well, constitutional amendments only go as far as the people in power are willing to let them. But the racist, pro-capitalist roots of policing aren't geographically limited to the South. So let's move on to Northern strikebreakers. During the 1800s, shippers and business owners.
Yeah. So this also. So when you say, oh, what about white? Because the poor too. They go after poor and workers also. And this indicates that, or this talks about how the northern police roots some of them are tied to labor workers. So let's listen.
in northern states convinced local governments to publicly fund forces to protect their assets and financial interests, which often translated to breaking up workers' unions. In other words, the earliest forms of police in the North were paid for by tax-paying citizens so the richest of the rich could have the government fight against terrible things like 8-hour workdays, child labor laws, and having a weekend.
Doesn't that sound like what's happening now in Starbucks and his temper tantrum with unionizing? Like it's so like it's such a history reliving itself when I hear these
example, in
stories.
1877, a Chicago business group called the Citizens Association raised $28,000 to buy rifles, cannons, and cavalry equipment to combat worker strikes in the city. But why spend your own money when you can spend tax money? Fast forward 20 years to the city of Latimer, Pennsylvania. When over 300 coal miners went on strike and refused to disperse, police, under the direction of a Pennsylvania county sheriff, opened fire on demonstrators, killing 19 people. When organized workers threatened the wealth of the rich and powerful, they were framed as violators of the law, which provided an opening for police to squash dissent. But the North-South divide still doesn't encompass the full scope of the racist and xenophobic institutions that provided the foundation for police today. So up next is the colonialist West. As far back as the 1830s, police entities like the Texas Rangers were on the front lines of the United States' violent expansion westward, working to dispossess land through the brutalization and murder of indigenous populations.
So, indigenous people too caught it. So we have it interwoven into American police DNA from the beginning. Fighting slaves, capturing them, brutalizing them, murdering them, fighting against workers for the capitalist unions, being murdered just because you want fairer working conditions. Sounds very similar to now. And then now we're getting to the indigenous population. The so-called Texas Rangers, you know how they're looked at as some high-class sort of police agency? Fuck those people, those guys. Texas Rangers. Look at their history.
There's a reason Walker Texas Ranger was played by a Chuck Norris and not a Chuck Berry. After the Mexican Revolution in 1910, the Texas Rangers grew rapidly until the organization expanded to more than 1,300 officers. Then from 1915 to 1917, Texas Rangers, working with local law enforcement, killed over 100 Mexican residents, rising out of the criminalization of Mexican people near the border. All of this culminated in the 1918 Porvenir Massacre, when the Texas Rangers murdered 15 unarmed locals under the false pretense that they were harboring bandits. One Army official at the time called it wholesale murder, and it caused such a public stir that it prompted state-level legislative hearings into the misconduct of the Rangers throughout Texas.
That's law enforcement, Nick. Law enforcement. But again, tell me, when are we supposed to go back to when they were good, Nick? This is the 1800s right here. So how far are we supposed to go back, Nick?
Like Dave Grossman said, they just mad that they can be recorded now. That's a quote.
That's it.
They just mad they can be recorded. They're mad that this is public consciousness now. It's a myth. That's why the way you named this series is a good idea, because this is America. Like, if you one of the people that still holding hope that reform is possible for this police, this is your country. This is the real history, the one they don't really teach you about.
Just yeah. So she's finishing up here, but this is a great video. Less than or about a minute left.
The State House investigation concluded that the Texas Rangers had committed many atrocities and extrajudicial killings, particularly of ethnic Mexicans. And one action the State House took was to reduce the size of the Texas Rangers, which is kind of like an early version of defund the police. The racist and xenophobic legacy of the police runs deep, meaning the violence we see enacted today isn't by accident. The criminal justice...
Look at their what's in their DNA: slave patrols, strike breakers, colonialism. This is their DNA. So tell me, when are we supposed to go back to when they were good again? It's a mythical time. They never were.
The justice system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. An institution built not for public safety, but for race and class control. One that's done little to change the racist framework.
I love how she mentions this. This is about race and class control. And I'll end that video there. And I mean, it actually ends here, but I'll leave it up because that's what this is about, Nick. Race and class control. It's terrible. Anyway, I got one last video that kind of that just defines slave codes. So for those that are, as familiar, I did want to kind of just define that so people know what slaves codes were.
I want to read this
that.
comment from
Go ahead.
real quick if you don't mind. This is a great comment
Yeah.
because I co-founded 10 Demands with Zoya. She taught me a lot on this issue, like straight up. So it also I gotta read in order. In some cases, these police will commit torture, forced disappearances, and massacres. The largest U.S. police assistance mission coincided with the war in Vietnam. It also trained officers from 77 countries in its Washington, D.C. academy. Ingalls' creed was simple: use cops to prevent communist revolution. So if I'm interpreting Zoya's comment right, like this is part of the NYPD, and you guys know the NYPD is an international organization. It essentially is a military. So they institute programs to make their police more capitalist and more class loyal to the ruling class, just like ours is. So that's a great comment for Zoya because she got a lot of those amazing historical tidbits. Like when you look at the history of the police, they really always were designed to serve the ruling class and break up the working class, as that video is playing as well.
Absolutely. All right, so this quick video will be getting done, probably wrapping up in the next 10 minutes or so, Nick. But this video, we're gonna play maybe 3 minutes of it. It's just a crash course on slave codes. I learned a little bit when I watched it also. So these are things we all should know, things that we all should just make sure we understand and how it's still happening. The 1994 crime bill funnels people to be slaves.
Hi, I'm Clint Smith, and this is Crash Course Black American History. There are all sorts of ways that societies restrict people's movement. For example, people can put gates and fences around their homes and communities. Or there are traffic cones that tell us where we can and can't drive. Even though sometimes I might accidentally run over them. I'm working on it. But some methods that society uses to restrict the movements of people are far more sinister, far more serious, and based on distorted beliefs, have no sincere interest in the safety of those people. What I'm thinking of in this case are something called slave codes. Slave codes were based on the belief that Black Americans were just an economic investment. They were purposefully designed to condone harming Black Americans and keeping them enslaved. Though some textbooks on slavery and slave codes refer to enslaved people simply as workers, they were not simply workers. They were treated as an underclass, and the legal system perpetuated that underclass status for economic and prejudicial reasons. Learning about slave codes makes all of this profoundly clear.
I watched this guy's videos before, so.
Slave codes were laws and policies developed during the colonial period to restrict the movement and freedoms of Black people. Though they were called slave codes, many times they were applied to free Black people as well. Remember that the distinction between Negro and enslaved was essentially meaningless during this time. The primary reason the slave codes were implemented was to explicitly and legally reinforce the racial hierarchy within the colonies.
So let me keep that definition up there. The primary reason the slave codes were implemented was to explicitly and legally reinforce the racial hierarchy within the colonies. I feel like the 1994 crime bill also is implemented to explicitly and legally reinforce the hierarchy within the colonies. We're still in colonies, within the colonies. Like I feel that about the 1994 crime bill. Like it's an example of what a slave code is, because it what is it control? It controls and sends and funnels black bodies, black and brown indigenous bodies back to the plantation. So let me play this last part.
To explicitly and legally reinforce the racial hierarchy within the colonies. Slave codes were a method of protecting the investment of white enslavers by restricting the lives of enslaved people in almost every imaginable way. The codes restricted enslaved people's ability to move around or engage in commerce that would make them financially independent. They basically restricted the very opportunities that would allow them to live with even relative freedom. When there were hints of enslaved people questioning their status, or even the possibility of someone planning a revolt, new slave codes were quickly passed to prevent such a thing from happening. Virginia was the first of the 13 colonies to implement large-scale slave codes. Since the United States was not quite the United States yet, each colony had their own version of these codes. At the time, they were not yet even referred to as slave codes, but even without the formal title, their purpose remained the same: to fundamentally restrict the rights of Black Americans, free and enslaved, and to explicitly deny them the rights afforded to white members of society. Let's take a look at an example.
Okay, I'll let him give the example because I knew that was the end of the definition, so I was going to stop it there just to kind of give a little crash course of slave codes for those that need a little more background in it. But I'll let him give the example for those that need an application.
Virginia passed this statute. Whereas some doubts have arisen whether children got by any Englishman upon a Negro woman should be slave or free, be it therefore enacted and declared by this present Grand Assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother, and that if any Christian shall commit fornication with a Negro man,
so this is a law.
All children born in this country.
This is a law that is.
Some doubts have arisen whether
that is enacted.
Let's take a look at an example.
Because white men are raping slaves and ex-slaves. That's what's happening here. So this law, so it's like trauma on top of trauma. So you're getting raped, and then on top of that, you have these laws. Yeah. So let's continue.
Example. In 1662, Virginia passed this statute. Whereas some doubts have arisen whether children got by any Englishman upon a Negro woman should be slave or free, be it therefore enacted and declared by this present Grand Assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother, and that if any Christian shall commit fornication with a Negro man or woman, he or she so offending shall pay double the fines imposed by the former act. After Elizabeth Key's case in 1656, which we talked about last episode, the Virginia House of Burgesses passed this official law.
So that was from a previous episode I had watched. So we won't go into that since we don't have any reference to the previous episode. So we know what slave codes are now fully. Nick, I do want to kind of throw up a bunch of comments if you want to comment on them, because we haven't been able to get to a lot of them. But before we do that, do you have any last comments on any part of this? The series now is called, it's the Nick and CJ show, but the series can appear anytime. So this is America series is what it's called, and this series, the first one, or the first episode of the series, is called American Policing, and we're just comparing how it hasn't changed. It's the same way it started is the same thing that we're seeing happening. This is 100 years of the same stuff. Do you have any last words on the topic before we kind of give shout outs and what's coming up next?
I hope you guys learned a lot, because this education, how you pull people to the left, because a lot of people, they want to act in good faith, but they watched Rush Hour 2. They saw the Die Hard series. They watched Law and Order, and they literally think the cops are these superheroes that have the best interests at heart. Yeah. And there are the culture warriors like Steven Crowder, which we saw earlier, but there are a lot of people who want to do well. They just propagandize. So if you learn something today, use that to break down the propaganda that has infested someone that's close to you, that people believe in the police state, just explain to them how this shit started. And that's the best we can do to start truly implementing the plans that we started in 10 demands. Because if you look at the entire list, we have our demands, but we have a step-by-step process to implement the demands. Step 1 is education.
Yeah.
Step 2 is more education. Step 3, oh yeah, we got education more. we do that because that's how we get started, right? So that's my final thoughts on the topic. Yeah, I wasn't planning on jumping on, but I didn't see those videos as well, so it was good to see him and react with you guys. So
absolutely. I'll toss up a few comments, Nick. If you can just, if you have any comments on their comment, you can say it. As I'm tossing that out, please make sure you like this stream. It is very important so that other people, so many people say they don't get notifications. So we're trying to combat that, and also for the replay, it allows people to have this show up in their notifications. But if that doesn't work, you can always subscribe to our Substack, and then we can send you email notifications. Like if you were on our Substack list, you would have got an email notification of this stream. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the wrong camera. Of this stream, and you would have been able to catch it live. So hope you like the content. The name of the series is This Is America Series. Just unveiling, and the whole concept is to uncover primarily for white Americans and white America, just raw truths that they may not have heard or seen, and perspectives that they may not have heard and or seen. Lastly, we are demonetized. So if you are able to support us financially, Patreon is the best way to support us. If we can probably try to add, I think my goal is to try to add another 50 subscribers. Maybe that we should do a stream and talk about that. But it's essential that we try to build our community larger so that RBN can do more work, so that we can travel and help unionize, for example, or we can tour and do a campaign where we're speaking as a group, and we're just all different types of things that
I remember
we
someone
do as a
asked us
group.
like, "Man, RBN should go on tour." We would love to, but if we get
Yeah.
Patreon, that's. I was on the ground reporting that on KC Tennis, and I told you guys it was really refreshing to be back on the ground, and I would love to be able to cover grassroots worker events, protests, put my body online. Like I'll be at the protest, if they fucking shoot me, I'll take it. It's whatever.
Yeah.
But I would love to do that for real. So, but that's the future of RBN. We're not there yet. But if you guys
Right.
let's get some support on Patreon. But I'll pass it to you, CJ.
Yeah, so we've come to the end of this stream. I'm gonna be leaving in literally 3 minutes to get my middle daughter. So thank you for watching. This is an important episode. I'm trying to do less clickbait stuff, Nick, less of the mainstream, and trying to focus on preparing this revolution. Because I can do stuff, Nick, that gets 7,000 views easily.
Yeah, it's not
But
hard.
it's not hard at all.
That's actually the easiest content for us to do.
That's easy. Very easy to do. Very easy to do. Literally, Nick, I know what to put in the title. I know what picture to put up, and I'll get 6,000 views. I know what to do. But we need to start focusing on the material, the education, the nitty gritty, the stuff that's not as glamorous. That's what we need. But we're gonna leave you with this video, another Malcolm X. I do a lot of Malcolm X videos. I'm getting ready to go, babe. I see you. I'm leaving.
Thanks for watching.
So yeah. So thanks for watching. Thanks for everybody on Facebook, on Twitter, on Rockfin. Shout out to Rockfin. We're trying to build our community there. Leaving you with a video from Malcolm X. We're not coming back after the video. The stream will end after the video. So thank you for watching, and signing off.
When black people who are being oppressed become impatient, they say that's emotional. Please, when black people who are being deprived of their citizenship, not only of their civil rights, but their human rights, become impatient, become fed up, don't want to wait any longer, then they say that's emotional. The Negro, so-called Negro leaders and organizations should be praised. They should be congratulated. They should be complimented. Because out of all of them combined, the white man has not yet found one who will play the role of Uncle Tom. But yet, you have found no Tom, no